if there's one thing I love, it's creating stuff. Art, music, kids, computer programs that simulate friends to cure my crippling loneliness. It's all the same. But one thing I've never really gotten into was games. You'd think that someone in my shoes would have already been dabbling in such things, and I have, but for the most part, it just isn't worth the time. Until now. With RPG Maker MV or 1005 in Roman numerals, thank you Google, the process of creating awesome RPGs is much more streamlined in comparison to other tools, and in this latest installment, even to older versions of the software. In fact, there was so much I wanted to touch in this video that I actually had to cut my notes down by about 10 pages. So let's do this. Some of the things I really wanted to cover in depth but really couldn't due to time's sake are just here in little bullet points that I'm going to go over very briefly. So here we go. Firstly, they've made the software and games created with it much more accessible by expanding use of it to the Mac operating system, where it was previously just PC only. Even more impressive, they've added the ability to publish games for Android, iOS, and Mac, and even HTML for use in web browsers, instead of the usual just executable file for Windows. Next up is the code system. Yeah, the most important part of the game building process, and the thing always keeping me from going any deeper into it. RPG Maker MV uses JavaScript as its primary language, choosing that in favor of the previous way of using Ruby, like it's been for the past few releases. This makes a lot of sense since JavaScript seems to be a little bit easier for most people, and of course because of the HTML5 output, but Ruby tends to run a little slower than JavaScript, and JavaScript is a little easier to find a way around if you have little to no experience with coding. Finally, combat is now easily switched from side view and first-person perspective, and this probably isn't the biggest of deals to most people, but it surely does offer a lot of visual possibilities in combat in your games, and is also just a really neat feature to have. It adds a new, modern punch, I guess you could say. The user interface is just as easy to use as ever. It gives you a massive space and a bunch of tiles to build your maps with. It's as easy as using your mouse to draw and drag things onto your maps, making the creation of beautiful RPG maps easier than ever. The software comes with a bunch of stuff, but there's also the option of purchasing the RPG Maker MV Essentials Pack for an extra $10, which adds 14 new music themes in OGG format for developing your game, as well as MP3 format for listening to, tile sets for 4 new dungeons, tile sets for town interiors and exteriors, as well as face sets with emotions, and some neat bonuses like icons that match dungeon tile and title backgrounds. And of course, there's an option of importing your own stuff as well. One thing I love about this version is the 50% uptick in resolution from previous ones. It's a nice change that gives games a more modern feel. One of my only gripes about games made in RPG Maker in the past was indeed the lack of detail in the characters and environment, making them feel all kind of weird and old in a way, kind of clunky. I didn't really care for it too much. And like I said, it was a change that I welcome with open arms, and I'm really enjoying so far. So now your screen resolution is 816 by 624 instead of whatever it was before. However, there are some plugins that can make it a little bigger, so I hear. Like I also said before, touch controls have been enabled so you can play your games on mobile platforms. Another great change that I'm sure a lot of developers and enthusiasts alike will enjoy playing around with. I personally love this and can't wait to see what people do with it. Overall, I can't say I have a lot of complaints about the software itself. My gripes lie in the games themselves, and as far as I know, there really aren't many ways to combat that, so I'm going to just leave that be. However, one minor quirk that did kind of bug me a little was in the new mobile touch controls. The pathing can be a little weird at times, requiring you to tap a million times in a shorter distance from your character, as opposed to longer, less frequent taps. Looking in the bigger picture, as they say, this isn't really a deal breaker by any means, since it does actually make a little sense, because I suppose depending on however the game's developer designed the maps, those longer taps could potentially lead to players ending up in parts of the map they aren't meant to be at any given time, or even allowing them to go through it in a way that wasn't intended by the designer. So it's a little annoying, like I said, just a small thing that for the most part probably isn't a big deal anyway, but also makes sense. Maybe I'm just trying to find something to cry about for review purposes. But anyways, I did enjoy the software overall. It provides a pleasant, seamless experience for both hardcore RPG creators and hobbyists alike. I believe that the little tagline on the Steam page says something along the lines of simple enough for a child to use, but powerful enough for a developer or something like that. And that really explains it nicely. in shorter terms. I love the easy, open-looking interface where everything is easy to use and find, and especially love the overall simplicity of RPG Maker. Everything from laying tiles to creating events is as easy as clicking a few buttons. The software itself is very resource efficient. I experienced no crashes on my PC, which is a literal tank, but even during tests on two laptops, one an old Lenovo ThinkPad, the other on a slightly newer Lenovo model that I don't know the name off the top of my head, the worst I experienced was a little bit of slowness on the ThinkPad, but still no crashes, so definitely a plus. RPG Maker is visually and functionally unchanged over the years, aside from some, minor tweaks to the actual look of the software, obviously, and aside from those small yet powerful changes in functionality rolled out in newer versions, it will remain an extremely valuable tool for those who are into creating these types of games. RPG Maker does bring a lot to the table in terms of new functionality. However, for those who are comfortable on some of the older versions of the software, a change may not be necessary, but is definitely worth it for the new outputs and Mac compatibility, as well as the switch to JavaScript. Might be a little bit better for some people. For $80, this may seem a bit pricey for some, especially those who are just trying to learn the ins and outs of the software or making these types of games. And I have to agree, if you don't absolutely need to publish games for mobile and Mac or HTML perhaps choosing an older version may be the better call. If you really look at it though, other softwares like it can be priced in the hundreds or higher and probably don't provide the same ease of use RPG Maker would. So from a personal standpoint, I'm inclined to say it's a bit pricey. However, after fiddling with it for the past week or so, I must say it can be worth the price if you really want to get into this sort of thing. Much like any creation tool, it's an investment and can definitely be well worth it in the long run. I'm very much looking forward to seeing what the community does with this, because as we know, a software like this can only go as far as the community takes it, and I'm sure within the next couple months we'll see an onslaught of new creative ideas, resources, and uses for some of the new features that are bound to be absolutely amazing. So, from a personal standpoint, like I said earlier, I think it's a bit pricey. Personally, I would overlook something like this in normal circumstances. However, I am grateful that I got a chance to use it, and I would rate it about a 4 out of 5 stars if I was still doing the whole website thing. And from a review standpoint, and from a creation standpoint, and a consumer standpoint, it is a very powerful, easy-to-use software that anybody can get into. And I love it. I like it. It's good. It's nice. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna sugarcoat or whatever the word is. But yeah, that's it. My name is Anthony from Network Theory Channel. Be sure to like if you like this video, dislike if you disliked it, comment because I'm lonely, and be sure to follow me on Twitter. Watch my live stream, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye. Bye. Recording didn't stop. That's awkward.